So welcome to Intro to Web 1. This is part of our ISSS Beginner series, where we make no assumptions about the experience you already have, and we try to introduce you to all these cool security concepts. So first of all, let's go into what the web is. Okay, so now that we've gone over what the web is, just kidding. We're not going to look at any of this stuff if you haven't noticed already, because there's really a lot of interworking machinery that goes on behind how the web works. And for CTFs, we really don't care about most of this stuff. So for CTFs, this is basically the sort of image that I want you to keep in your head. You're here sitting at this computer on the left, and you're looking for a server that's on the internet, and this server is just talking to you and is holding a conversation with your computer. We do that by sending messages back and forth from your computer to the server and from the server to your computer. And these messages are basically just strings that can be up to a reasonable limit as long as we want. These are called packets. And more generally, you're speaking with a server, and that server is speaking possibly to a bunch of other servers. For example, this server is talking to a database in the back, and you're having a conversation with this server while the server is having a conversation with the database, so that it can get you the information that you asked for from the database back to you. So if we sort of visualize this, let's say you're trying to log in, and you send a little request to the server. The server sees your username and password. Then the server asks the database, does this username and password exist? The database says yes. Then the server is like, okay, let me log you in now. So it sends back a response saying you've logged in. So let's go into a little bit more detail to understand this process a little bit better. So step number one is the user opens up their browser and they type in example.com and press enter. What this happens is this opens up a connection or a conversation with the server that's associated with example.com. Then the client, which is your computer, sends over this packet containing this HTTP message, get index.html http/1.1 host example.com. So essentially, you can think of HTTP as a way to ask for and receive text documents. So in this case, we're asking for index.html, which is sort of the default document that when you go on a website, by default, it serves you index.html. Then the server says, okay, let me look for index.html on my disk. It finds the file, and then it sends it back over to you along with a bunch of headers. Here, server is a header, content type is also a header, and http/1.1 200 success, that is a status code. So 200 just means success, and this is saying I am example.com and you're about to be served a text HTML document. And after these headers, there's a new line followed by whatever content was in that document. So then you're like, okay, let me read through this HTML file. The browser's like, okay, there's a head tag here. I'm gonna put that up here. There's a body tag. I'm gonna put it down here. And hey, look, there's a script tag. And the script tag says source equals scripts index.js. So this is a reference to another file that's on the server, which the client hasn't asked for yet. So now the client has to go ask for it using another HTTP request. So it goes and sends a message to the server. And of course, the server sends back the JavaScript file. And essentially, you can think of JavaScript as a program that runs on this website. And this particular program contains a function, which doesn't run immediately. It runs when the function is called, just like any other program. And it looks like this function invokes some endpoint on the server, meaning that it will send a message requesting the login document using a post request. We'll go into that later. And it sends over a username and a password, and then handles a response back from the server. And let's say right after this, the user submits the form. And then because they submitted the form, this function submit form might run in the browser. And because of that, a login request is created by the JavaScript code, which may look like this. So we have a little post request, and it's posting to this document login, and it's contacting example.com, and it says my username is this and my password is hunter2. So let's zoom out a bit. Then the server receives this username and password, and it uses a SQL connection to a database, which may be part of the same server and may be somewhere far away. And it creates this SQL query string. So it checks if your username is this and your password is this. And the reason why the password looks like garbage and not like hunter2 is because of something called hashing, which takes your password and it turns it into something that's not recognizable and cannot be easily reversed to the actual password. So then the database receives this SQL query and sends back all the records that correspond to this user. Now the server knows that this user exists, and it will log us in. Okay. I realize it's getting a bit dry at this point, but we're almost at the end. This part is super important. The server, now that it knows that you have the correct username and password, it will send back a HTTP response with a set cookie header. And this header basically tells the browser, I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this token, and the token's value is EJ, EY, JHB, GCI, blah, 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 some sort of garbage. So now the browser stores this cookie on the disk. It will remember it for the foreseeable future, and every single access to the server will now have this token attached automatically. The user doesn't have to type it in. The JavaScript doesn't have to remember it. It's just automatic. When you make a request to the server, this cookie will be attached. So now that we're sending over this cookie, the server now knows who the client is because it can check the cookie against what it remembers. And usually this cookie is securely designed so that a hacker can't just mess with the cookie. Okay. So most of the time, when you're dealing with a web CTF problem, you are dealing with a client-side exploit. So this is because you are in control of the client side. You don't have direct control over the server, but all of this stuff back here, like the cookies, the JavaScript, you have complete control over that because it's running on your machine.